Hi guys, my name is Michelle. I'm a tutor for Chegg Tutors and I usually teach English, math, and psychology. Today we're going to be talking about psychotherapy. So psychotherapy is commonly known as talk therapy, and it's defined as the use of psychological methods to help a person overcome problems in a healthy way. So its goal is to increase an individual's well-being and mental health by resolving behaviors, compulsions, thoughts, etc. So there's thousands of variations to psychotherapy. Some are held in groups, some are one-on-one, some vary in very different concepts in psychology. There's different ways to classify psychotherapy. So for example, the famous psychoanalyst Sigmund Freud practiced hypnotism early in his career, and then later he changed his focus and focused on conditions in which psychological issues seemed to come from childhood experiences. So he developed techniques that included free association, dream interpretation, this thing called transference, and analysis of the id, the ego, and the superego that you might have learned in other classes. There was another field of psychology, behaviorism, in the 1920s, and this therapy involved operant conditioning, classical conditioning, social learning theory. There's also existential philosophies that gave rise to therapies sensitive to common life crises and formed unique relationships between the doctor and the patient. So, for example, the famous psychologist Carl Rogers listed 3 conditions for this relationship: unconditional positive regard, congruence or genuineness, and emphatic understanding. So, another form of psychotherapy developed in the 50s known as cognitive therapy, and this focused on identifying and changing a person's beliefs, appraisals, and reaction patterns. So, as I said, there's several ways to separate different types of psychotherapies, and the ones that I mentioned, there's many more where that came from. And so, for example, you can look at psychotherapy from 2 different models. There's the medical model, and there's the humanistic model. So the medical model sees the patient as sick or unwell, and then the therapist brings the patient back to health. While the humanistic model, it helps the client build confidence and understand themselves better. So the humanistic model doesn't really look at therapy as treating a disease. Therapies can also be divided into lengths of sessions. So a few sessions over a couple of weeks might be classified as brief therapy, while sessions that take years and are regular length rather than short sessions, they might be called long-term therapy. There's also other different forms of therapy, such as expressive therapy, which uses artistic expression as its core means of treating clients. Or another therapy called systemic therapy, which deals with interactions between groups, so such as family counseling or marriage counseling. So that there is a lot to do with psychotherapy. There are many fields in it. There are a lot of different approaches. However, some are very skeptical of the healing power of psychotherapeutic relationships, and some argue that psychotherapy isn't used enough. So they argue that it's under-researched and there's not a high enough budget for it. But nevertheless, the field of psychology is changing all the time. It's growing and evolving, and as we learn more and more about the mystery of the brain, we learn more and more about how to treat certain mental disorders. So I hope you enjoyed your lesson on psychotherapy. Have a wonderful day. Thank you for listening.